Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and today's video is another episode in my Building the Shot series, which is a series where I basically break down everything I can about how a single photo of mine was taken. In this video, I'm going to go over how I took this photo on the screen right here of Kay when I was recently down in Florida for vacation. One thing I haven't really done a lot in these videos is explain how the photo shoot came to be, so I do want to change that. And unfortunately for this video, it is a bit simple in that my friend Ray Alvarez, who is a great photographer and educator, who also has a YouTube channel, he actually set up this photo shoot. It's of his wife. The model is actually his wife, and she's also a makeup artist. So that's how the makeup was done. That's how we got the model, and that's how the photo shoot came to be. Before I continue, I do want to let you know that this video is sponsored by Adorama. Adorama is an industry-leading retailer that has been serving photography, videography, and audio customers for almost 50 years now. Their motto is everyone is creator, and they do their best to unleash that creator within us all by providing us with the tools and expertise necessary to get the job done. I personally shop at Adorama for both the great deals on products I use and recommend, but also the great customer service as well. If you find yourself interested in any product that I talk about in today's video, definitely check the links that are going to be in the description area below, and be sure to use those links if you decide to order. The lighting that I used was the Xplor 100 Pro, also known as the Godox AD100 Pro, and I used that with the very portable SMDV Flip 20 Beauty Dish. That is a portable softbox that has a magnetic attachment on it that allows me to connect the 100 Pro directly to that softbox. The camera and lens that I used was the Sony a7R III with the Tamron 35-150 f2 to 2.8 lens. I've been using that lens a lot lately. I used it exclusively at Shutterfest, and even though I do like primes, I'm using that lens more for the versatility. On the screen right here is a photo of Ray that I took sneakily taking photos of his wife. I wanted a quick behind the scenes for him, and the setup that he used, I believe, is the 600 Pro manual with a 48-inch octabox, and he's using some sort of normal flashpoint stand on there. This location was the first location that we worked with, and this was the first spot that he chose to post her in that area. And this was actually across the street from a much more populated park, which was actually in Winter Park, but that park was very populated, so we didn't want to be amongst all those different crowds. There was an event going on for 4th of July a little bit early because it was July 2nd, and it was just a bit of an early celebration for that. So we decided to choose this more secluded area, which was an alleyway for two businesses that were currently closed. Even though on the top of this photo you can see that the sky is a little bit bright, none of that light was reaching into this alleyway. So it was a situation where we would want to add some light to get some extra depth in our photos. So that's why we both used lighting, even though the natural light was pretty nice. This second shot just shows a different angle of that behind the scenes. And then I want to be very upfront with you guys. I believe this picture was taken without the flash on, but this second photo is just messy. I'm gonna say this next couple of shots were very messy. I wanted her to be in that sunlight, and I actually do think it looks nice, but right now it's a little bit bright on the chest area. So I believe I get her away from that patch of bright sunlight to be more with the shade, and I wanted that sunlight, that bright sunlight, to be more of like an edge light. But my biggest error with doing that is that the light is coming from the front, so it's not gonna be an edge light. I was thinking maybe the little bit of extra bit of bright sun could kind of get the sides of her shoulder, and it could act like an edge light or rim light. It would look like one, but that was not the case. That's not what happened. So I ended up putting her more and more in shade. Another big mistake on my end was I was adjusting the light, the 100 Pro, to be brighter, but I was on the wrong channel. So I believe this light here, the 100 Pro, because I typically use it as a rim light or as any sort of second light, it's not the main light basically. I had it on group B, and I was changing the power on my flash transmitter to, group A. I was changing the power of group A. So I actually thought I was increasing the power of the light, but it wasn't. I ended up, I think this previous shot here, the light's off. So if you really focus on her face, you can see the tiniest bit of extra light in this photo here. So it's just the tiniest bit of light. I believe the flash was, or the 100 Pro was on 1/32, and I was seeing full power on the light because I was on group A, and I thought, okay, wow, this light is pretty weak. But yeah. I did end up taking a couple of photos with the light being so weak, and it is still okay in my opinion. I could probably work with the photos, but it's not ideal as a straight out of camera shot to edit. But I think Kay did a great here with the posing and the modeling. So I think that second shot right there I just showed you, that was when I realized my mistake and increased the power of the light. But this is the last shot that I took with that lower output on my light setup. This photo that you're seeing on the screen right here, this is actually closer over here towards those doors because I wanted those doors to be the kind of the background, the doors and that red area on top. I wanted those to be the background because it had some color to it that I think matched more of the colors that were going on with her outfit and her makeup. So I had those kind of behind her. But in this very first shot, because I then realized that the 100 Pro was on the wrong group and I could increase the power, I think I might have put it to full power and I adjust my settings to be, I'm at 1/200th of a second, f2.8 ISO 100, and now the exposure behind her, the ambient, is pretty dark. So immediately after I took this photo, which I actually do like, it's very dramatic, I think I increased the ambient quite a bit to be ISO 200, 1/200th of a second, f2.8. So I think I just increased it one stop in the ISO. One thing I do want to admit to myself right now is that I do wish I had a little bit more power with this specific shot, because I don't really have her popping as much as this previous shot. Even though I didn't really like the level of ambient in this shot, she still kind of pops from the image. So when I added more ambient here, I wish I did increase the exposure of the flash to be a little bit brighter, because I want her to pop. I want the subject to always pop in my photos. Unfortunately, I didn't adjust the power, so I took this photo, and these next ones kind of changing the composition. This is with the light off, just to show you guys how it looked like, and then here's with the light on. And I think this is the last photo I took in that spot, and I really liked this one. And obviously you can see that the flash is now brighter, so that's probably why I really like this and chose this one to be the final shot before I took a behind the scenes right here, which you can see on the screen. This last shot is because I did realize that this previous shot that I liked, it is a little bit tight in terms of the framing, so I decided to just go a little bit further behind and take another shot, and that's what ended up with this one. What you're seeing on the screen now is the third spot where I had positioned her for this different kind of composition. And across the street, you can see behind her is the park that I mentioned before. There was a lot of people there. That's why there's a lot of cars behind her parked. To be honest with you guys, I went into taking these next set of photos that I'm about to show you in mind. I had it in mind that I was going to use AI in Photoshop, the generative fill tool, to remove all the different distractions. So I wasn't too worried. And I'll actually show you guys in a second how that looks like. So I was just kind of focused on what I can do to kind of limit those distractions around her. How do I kind of do in-camera editing with what I'm given, with the situation that I'm given. One thing I did decide to do is, instead of taking a full body shot like this one right here, I decided to go ahead and just go a bit zoomed in, and I went from, I think this is at 103 millimeters to 150 millimeters, and I also got a little bit lower so that I got more of those trees in the background and the cars are lower on the bottom. I am still at ISO 200 f2.8 at 1/200th of a second, because I did want this level of ambient light behind her, because I get a little bit of detail in those trees at the risk of having a little bit brighter exposure in the sky behind her. If I really did expose for that sky behind her, then those trees would kind of look too dark. There would be very little detail. So I chose this exact exposure with these settings for good reason. I kept ISO 200 even though I could have been at ISO 100, because I wanted to stay with that 1/200 shutter speed, because my hands are not the calmest. They tend to be a bit shaky. So I went ahead and just kept it at a higher shutter speed at 1/200th of a second and kept ISO 200 instead of just risking that motion blur with a slower shutter speed, just so I can stay at ISO 100. One thing that is tricky with this photo is the catch lights. If you pay attention to her hat, the hat and also her face in general is aimed a little bit up, because if I had the angle of the head lower, then there would definitely be no catch lights in the eye because of the hat blocking the light from her eyes. In order to get more light into her face and in those eyes, I decided to ask her to lift her chin just slightly and aim a little bit to the side, which gave me this result here. And I actually really like this photo, so I'm gonna go ahead and rate it 5 stars so I can edit it later. But this is the very next photo that I took with those different changes, having her angle up her face a little bit more. And then after I did that, I decided to change up the pose, or at least ask her to change up the pose. And she gave me another great pose, which is this one here. But the squint that she's given me now is also risky because of those catch lights now being gone. But honestly, to be really honest with you guys, I wouldn't have mind that, because her pose and everything looks so great in this picture here that I don't think the catch lights would have been extremely necessary. But also at the same time, if I wanted to, I could probably Photoshop the catch lights from the previous shot into this one if I really wanted them to be there. I was happy with this shot, so she just varied up the pose and gave me this one, and then we continued. This is a blurry version of the behind the scenes. It was very strongly backlit behind her, so the autofocus was struggling a little bit, so I manually focused and got this behind the scenes right here. Even though I did prefer the other shot to edit, I believe it was this one here, I did edit this one here only because one thing that I've been seeing a lot lately on Instagram is people record with their phone the back of the camera and then taking a picture. And I thought, you know what, let me go ahead and just try that. Let me see how well or not it could do on Instagram. So I did that, and it was very hard. I had the Sony a7R III with the Tamron 35 to 150 zoomed in, so it was very heavy. So in the video that I'm about to show you on the screen right now, you can clearly see that my hand is a bit shaky because of how heavy it was. But again, the main reason why I edited the photo that's on the screen right here is because that was the photo that I took in that behind the scenes video. So I wanted it to be very, accurate to what you saw on the back of the screen. I honestly didn't do much of the adjustments here, these regular overall adjustments that apply to the entire photo. I did a lot more selective adjustments, which I'll show you guys in a second. But one thing I usually always do when it comes to my photos is increase the saturation, and I do that here on the very bottom with this calibration section. I always increase the blue primary's saturation slider to anywhere from 80 to 100. In this case, I thought it would be good at 80, but two colors always get increased too much, which are blues and oranges. But in this case, even though I do usually reduce those two colors, I did like how the colors were looking in the background behind her. So instead of reducing the colors of the oranges and the blues throughout the entire image, specifically more of the oranges than the blues, I wanted to go ahead and just do more selective reduction of saturation and even temperature, because if her face is too orange, then I could cool it a bit to get a correct skin tone. So I went ahead and just made selective adjustments with the adjustment layer instead, and I'll show you guys right now. So as you can see real quickly, I didn't adjust the temperature or the tint, and instead I made a lot more adjustments here in this section here, which is going to be masking section, which is the same thing as the adjustment brush section, which just shows you all the different layers and all the different adjustments that I did. So to show you guys exactly what I did with the skin, I went ahead and brushed over like the skin that felt like it was too orange on her arms, her legs, the stomach area, and her face and chest. And I reduced the color temperature by 20 and increased the tint to 30 because I felt like it was too warm and it was too green. So in order to correct that, I added some magenta and I reduced the color temperature to be a little bit cooler. And that gave me a more correct skin tone. And I'll show you guys how that looks like without those adjustments on. Here is the before and here is the after. And again, this has nothing to do with the makeup. This is me adjusting that blue saturation slider, that blue primary saturation slider, to be too high, and it increased the oranges way too much and made them too funky. But I liked the color in the background, so that's why I reduced and corrected the skin tone on her. This second mask right here was just a little bit more reduction of the colors in her face. You can see before and after. It is very subtle, but I wanted to go ahead and just get the skin tone to be really how I wanted it on the face. So I did go ahead and reduce the temperature a little bit to -10 and increased a little bit more magenta to 10, and that was just only on her face. The very next thing I did was increase the exposure in just the eyes, so you can see the eyes a little bit better. I also increased the shadows on the hair so I can see them a little bit more better. Then I went ahead and selected just the sky and reduced the highlights because I felt like they were too blown out, so I wanted to just bring them back a little bit. And finally, the last two things that I did was I increased the exposure of just K to just give her a little bit more of a pop. And the last thing was just a little bit more detail in the chest and the darker area around her shorts, because I felt like the detail was just too gone there. So I wanted to go ahead and just increase it a little bit. And then after that, I did all my editing in Photoshop, which I'll show you really quickly in Photoshop. Now that we're here in Photoshop, I can show you guys how I edited the shot. Unfortunately, it's not going to be the full edit because I forgot to save the little bit of frequency separation that I did. I did not have to do a lot with that because her skin was very smooth. I did a little bit of adjusting of the colors with the selective color adjustment layer, and I didn't do much with that either. And I also removed a little bit of the colors behind her legs in that part that I didn't save, but the heavy lifting is going to be what you're seeing right here. I did a good amount of dodge and burn with this layer here. So this is the before and then this is the after. And then I did a lot of generative fill to remove all these different things around her. So here's the before and then here's the after. And that was pretty much the heavy lifting, removing all those distractions. That's pretty much it for this video. I hope you guys learned something from it. I hope you got a little bit more insight into how I do my photo shoots. But if you have any other questions about anything in this video, let me know in the comment section below and I'll reply as soon as possible. I want to give one last thanks to Adorama for sponsoring this video because it does allow me to dedicate more time to my channel and make free videos for you guys. So definitely check them out. Take care guys, and I'll see you in the very next video.